Frank Fritz, beloved co-host of American Pickers, was more than just a TV personality. He was a man who lived life on his own terms. But when he passed away on September 30th, 2024, at the age of 60, it wasn't just the loss of his infectious enthusiasm and deep knowledge of forgotten Americana that left a void. It was the shocking fortune he left behind. Frank's death didn't just break hearts, it left behind millions, a fortune that would redefine how his family and friends saw him. But before we dive into the money, let's rewind to Frank's final moments. A story as emotional as it is unexpected. Frank's health had been on a steep decline in the years leading up to his death. He'd suffered a stroke in 2022, and the complications from that stroke would ultimately lead to his passing 2 years later. According to TMZ, the official cause of death was listed as the late sequelae of a cerebral infarction, a medical term that essentially means the lasting damage from the stroke finally caught up with him. But that wasn't all Frank was battling. He was also dealing with aortic stenosis, a condition that made it hard for blood to flow properly through his heart. It was a double blow, and even the strongest picker can't haggle with fate. But here's where the story takes a turn you weren't expecting. Despite his struggles, Frank's last years were about more than just his health. They were about reconciliation, particularly with his longtime friend and co-host, Mike Wolfe. The two had been inseparable since middle school, bonding over a shared love of picking and a difficult childhood. But like many friendships, fame and fortune took their toll, and by 2021, their relationship had hit rock bottom. Frank openly accused Mike of turning American Pickers into a one-man show. "It's like you've got Aerosmith and there's Steven Tyler," Frank said. "I found my spot, I'm second, and he's number one on the show." It was a stinging critique, but no one could have predicted the heartwarming twist that would follow. In the wake of Frank's stroke, the two men began to rebuild their friendship. By 2023, they were talking again, and Mike wasn't about to let his friend go without making things right. "I got the call that he wasn't doing well," Mike said. "I just feel blessed that I was able to get there." Mike held Frank's hand in his final moments, rubbing his chest as Frank took his last breath. "I wasn't mad anymore," Mike whispered to him. "Just go find your mom. Go find her right now." In that tender moment, everything else, TV ratings, fame, petty feuds, melted away, leaving only two lifelong friends finding peace. But Frank wasn't just a man of great emotional depth. He was also a man who turned a childhood passion into a multi-million-dollar empire. Born in Davenport, Iowa, Frank's love for collecting started young, from rocks to beer cans, and eventually antiques. But it wasn't until his 25 years as a fire inspector that Frank realized he could turn his hobby into a career. By the time American Pickers premiered in 2010, Frank was already a seasoned picker. Alongside Mike Wolfe and Danielle Colby, Frank crisscrossed the country in search of forgotten treasures, and the show quickly became a hit, resonating with audiences who loved the thrill of discovery. Over 22 seasons and 300 episodes, American Pickers didn't just showcase antiques, it showcased Frank's incredible eye for value, his unrelenting passion, and his ability to spot treasure in what others dismissed as junk. Frank wasn't just on TV, he was an authority in the antique world, having authored 2 best-selling books, American Picker's Guide to Picking and How to Pick Vintage Motorcycles. His antique store, Frank Fritz Finds, in Savannah, Illinois, became a hub for collectors and fans alike. By the time of his death, Frank had amassed a net worth of $6 million, a stunning figure for a man who once scoured junkyards for rusty signs and vintage motorcycles. But here's where the drama takes center stage. When someone leaves behind a fortune like that, it's not just family who's left to mourn. It's also left to navigate the financial legacy. Frank's passing didn't just leave an emotional void, it set the stage for unexpected twists. His will, filed in court just a year before his death, would determine who would inherit his multi-million-dollar estate. The Midwest One Bank, which had been appointed as his conservator following his stroke, was also named the executor of his estate. But Frank's will was sealed tight. Whatever secrets lay within, they were locked away. One thing was clear, though. Frank had planned ahead. His estate, worth millions, would soon be distributed, and tensions were already rising. As Frank Fritz's life came to a close, it wasn't just his legacy as a beloved TV personality that left a mark, but his final struggles that would cast shadows over the fortune he'd amassed over the years. On the outside, Frank was a man who had it all. He'd turned his passion for antiquing into a multi-million-dollar empire, and his appearances on American Pickers had made him a household name. But behind the scenes, a heartbreaking reality unfolded. As his health deteriorated, so did his will to keep fighting, and those closest to him, especially his lifelong friend Mike Wolfe, witnessed the toll it took on him. Jerry, another close friend, summed it up perfectly. "I think Frank could have lived a lot longer if the will to live would have been there. The pain, both physical and emotional, had become too much to bear." But before we get lost in the sadness, let's rewind a bit and understand just how far Frank had come. From his days growing up in Davenport, Iowa, Frank was always driven by a desire to find value in the forgotten. He turned that childhood passion into an empire, earning millions through his antique shop and American Pickers fame. Yet, as the years went on, life dealt him some tough cards. His battle with addiction began to take center stage, and despite Mike Wolfe's attempts to help him, it was clear that Frank was sinking deeper into despair. Frank's struggle with opioids, triggered by years of chronic pain from Crohn's disease and a broken back, was no secret to those who cared about him. And as much as Mike tried to intervene, his friend's battle with addiction and his worsening health took its toll, both on Frank's personal life and his fortune. Now, let's pause and take a deeper look at how the money was spent. Frank's estimated $6 million net worth had been significantly drained by medical bills. The cost of his health care, spending upwards of $30,000 a month for around-the-clock care, took a massive bite out of what was once a thriving fortune. From physical therapy to surgeries, no expense was spared in an attempt to keep Frank's body functioning after his stroke and aortic stenosis diagnosis. The reality was, his farmhouse in Iowa, once a symbol of his success, had to be retrofitted to accommodate his health needs. The house that had once housed motorcycles and antiques now stood as a quiet witness to his physical decline. Despite the property's rising value, the financial strain weighed heavily on Frank, and it's unclear how much of his estate, including his iconic collection of vintage treasures, will be left to those closest to him. Now, as plans to auction off some of Frank's prized possessions are in motion, his family and friends are left grappling not only with the financial ramifications, but with the emotional toll of losing someone who had such a lasting impact on their lives. The auction, which will allow fans to own a piece of Frank's history, could help recoup some of the financial losses, but it also serves as a way to honor the man whose work continues to inspire collectors and fans alike. And for those who were closest to Frank, the real value wasn't in the antiques or the money. It was in the moments they shared, the lessons he taught them, and the legacy he left behind. Despite the struggles and the heartbreak, Frank Fritz's story is one of resilience, humility, and a reminder that even the roughest roads can be traveled with heart and humor. His legacy won't be defined by the amount of wealth he accumulated, but by the way he lived his life, passionately, authentically, and with a sense of humor that made him unforgettable. As fans prepare to bid on his collection, the real takeaway from Frank's journey is clear. Life is about the journey, not the destination. And Frank Fritz? He put everything into his.